Hola gente de nuestro grupo Grite. Estamos acá nuevamente en otro encuentro que hacemos habitualmente con nuestro grupo. Tenemos otra vez la suerte de contar con Pablo Burquet como no solamente una persona que se une a nuestra conversación, sino además una persona que nos va a ayudar con el inglés. Y tenemos la suerte de contar con Chet Williamson como nuestro invitado especial de la fecha. Chet Williamson, un autor que ha comenzado a escribir a mitad de la década de los 80, en pleno boom de los horror paperbacks, y ha continuado escribiendo desde esa fecha hasta ahora, manteniendo siempre una excelente calidad en todas sus obras. Lamentablemente, como sucede con muchos autores, su obra no ha sido traducida al español, ni en Latinoamérica ni en España, lo cual es una pena, pero sus libros pueden conseguirse y son absolutamente recomendables, incluyendo una de las mejores novelas que yo he leído, que es Rain, pero eso es algo particular. Lean toda su obra, que es maravillosa, y ojalá se traduzca al castellano. Bienvenido, welcome, Chet Williamson, a nuestro meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, after the introduction of Fernando talking about a little about your resume of your extraordinary career as a writer, and as I would like to add, if I may, as an actor.
Yes.
Yes.
Without further ado, I invite my colleagues to start firing up, and let's ask our exceptional writer over here. Okay?
Okay.
Emiliano, you have the word.
Creo que arranco yo.
¿Vos?
Sí.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry.
Mi primera pregunta es, sus primeras novelas e historias utiliza, y no era frecuente para la época, varios personajes homosexuales. Por ejemplo, en su novela Soundstorm, en su novela policial McCain Dilemma o Dreamtorp, utiliza personajes gay. Estamos hablando de mitad de la década de los 80. Dos preguntas, sabemos lo difícil que era en ese momento. Dos preguntas con respecto a esto. La primera es, ¿le resultó difícil o tuvo problemas al publicar contando con personajes, a veces en roles protagónicos, homosexuales? Y la segunda pregunta es, varios de esos personajes desean fervientemente, por lo menos dos de esos personajes desean fervientemente ser heterosexuales. Estamos en la década de los 80. ¿Cómo lee ahora esa necesidad de ser heterosexual?
All right. Fernando is talking about your first novels and stories where homosexuals, gay people are the main characters or secondary characters. Many of them acting as the leading role. For instance, in Soulstorm, your first novel, and there is also homosexual characters in McCain Dilemma or Dreamthorpe. So he would like to make two questions. One, considering the lapse of time where you are started to write, if this particular situation of being gay in those 80s, or the 80s of that time,
Right.
did it bring you any kind of trouble when publishing or not?
It did not. Soulstorm was published in 1986.
Oh.
And that's a long time ago. And attitudes toward LGBTQ people have changed significantly and become more accepted. Um,
Absolutely.
I came from a theatrical background, and a lot of my friends I have uh, lots of gay friends and worked with people, and my wife and I, our dearest friend uh, in both in college and in adult life was gay, and uh, I I guess it was only natural that I should deal with that in my fiction. And uh, I wanted to support uh, LGBTQ people in my writing. And as you say, in Soulstorm, what the hero, the main character, is gay.
Yes.
But in McCain's Dilemma, the villain is gay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I I wanted to show both sides. In other words, just because you're gay doesn't mean you're a great person, and nor does it mean that you're a bad person. So that it's a very simplistic way of looking at sexuality. But at the time, looking back 40 years, um, I that was kind of how allies um, approached it and how I wanted to approach it. And I had gay character in Dreamthorpe. The female protagonist is bisexual. Um, I guess I never really had any publisher. I was with Tor Books and Avon Books for two of those books, and I never had any editor tell me that you really shouldn't be dealing with this. So it just seemed natural to me, and I've had gay characters, LGBTQ characters in my books ever since.
Yeah, if I would like to add that maybe back in those years, in the, for instance, New York scenario or LA, Frisco scenario,
Hmm.
it was much more comfortable for the, let me say it, ordinary people to have a neighbor, a close friend,
Yes.
even a couple of
Yes.
the same gender or whatever.
Hmm.
But all the Midwestern and, of course, the Deep South Delta was a little rejecting the main idea. So maybe the publishers established in the both coasts uh, was more open to this kind of situation that we all regret to say that was put under the carpet for so many no years but centuries.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
uh,
I'm
yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I just hope here in the United States we're not turning the other way again. I don't want to get too political, but I don't like the signs of what's happening here now.
Yes, I'm just returned 2 weeks ago from the States.
Hmm.
Um, yes, I want to say, I wouldn't like to say anything about politics, much more considering another country politics, but as very a citizen of another country that used to go for teaching or for giving a speech or just for the sake of tourism uh, in just in a week of inauguration, I saw many things that I was say, oh well, okay. Uh, anyway,
Yeah.
the other question that Fernando asked, that in many of these first works of yours, these gay characters or LGBT, whatever, fervently want to be heterosexuals. Maybe a mark of the time, the 80s. Um, how do you read that situation nowadays?
I,
They
I'm not quite sure I understand. In in and I was getting my coffee. So
no, don't worry, don't
Right.
worry, don't worry, don't worry.
If you could
Uh,
say that
uh,
again.
I, of course, apologize for my rusty English.
No, no, it's fine. I just my attention was where am I going to put my coffee in? No, but
Fernando,
regarding the homosexual characters in the books,
yes, you according to Fernando question is that many of them, or one of them, is trying to go
become
to, yeah,
heterosexual.
yeah,
Yes, yes. That is something that if I had written today, I probably would not have used that device
Yes.
yeah,
because at that time, um, it, so many people felt that, oh, homosexuals are sick, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
they need the transition, which is absurd. Because we know that now that it is that way. If you are gay, you were born gay. But it does, looking back on it, while it makes me feel uncomfortable that I made the decision to do that, um, in a way, it makes sense in that the character, I forget the character's name, but the gay character in Soulstorm, that his biology was changed by whatever bizarre force inhabited the pines, and that he wanted this, but it wasn't necessarily that he wanted it as much as it was the house, the thing making him want
yes,
and changing him and basically doing to him what he might not have wanted done. But
yes.
no, that's a very good point. That I probably would not have done that the same way had I been writing today.
Yes, I couldn't agree more, if I may. Back in the 80s, I was finishing my law school, and I never, ever would imagine that I would be the best man at a gay wedding.
Mm,
And I'm so proud of myself making the arc of
yes.
this gay man.
Hmm.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about me, so I can say that. That gay man perspective
Hmm.
to became the best man of a couple of gay person, because the nature of each one, I don't care,
Hmm.
is
Right.
just people who love each other
Exactly.
and decided to tie the bone. All
Hmm.
right. And
Hmm.
they want, according to our friendship for the whole life,
Hmm.
literally, that I would be a good best man. So I felt myself pretty much honored, but I have to confess that if this situation would have happened in the 80s,
Mm-hmm.
I would say, by all means, no.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
No, no, no for me,
Right.
but for
Right.
the, as you say, the constriction of the environment,
Mm-hmm.
discussing about, or not discussing, not accepting about a situation that was putting under the carpet.
Right. Right.
That
It's in the 80s and in the 70s there were a number of films and shows. Like there was a show called The Boys in the Band, and a lot of people felt that it had a gay, the characters were all gay men, and there was a feeling that it perpetuated the idea of the self-hating gay person, and which was bad. Uh, but the thing is, I knew back in the 70s, I knew gay people who had great relationships with other gay men. Back then, you couldn't get married, but it didn't matter because they were loving relationships, and we were dear friends with them. Um, my wife's sister, my sister-in-law, was one of the first women. She moved to Canada, and she was one of the first women to marry another woman in Canada when they permitted it. So we've been allies, I guess I want to say, for many, many years, and that allyship has extended itself into trans people. I know a lot of trans people and trans writers now, and the struggle right now in our country is to have trans people accepted as the gender they choose to be, and there are people fighting that. We have issues right now in our school board. There was a French documentary made about our school board, and the election, and trans issues were very much a part of that. Unfortunately, I have to say that the conservatives won, and that trans people are being discriminated against here, and it's a shame. But I mean, it's like writers have to keep fighting. I think when you come right down to it, all writing is political in a sense.
yeah,
Um, but we have to be careful not to preach, not to sermonize, and make the if we want to if we they say if you want to send a message, call Western Union, but I don't think that's true. I don't think any good writing is middle of the road writing. You have to take a stand, and I think in this country it's going to become more and more important. Well, Argentina. I mean, it's not like Argentina has not had political uprisings and upheavals in its time.
yeah.
So,
We are following the path of the big brother of the North,
mm,
so
yeah, yeah.
we can share your concerns and anything. Okay,
All right, we'll avoid that again.
let's back to the horror and
Sounds good. Sure.
that is lesser horrible of the horror of Nova.
Mm-hmm. Yes, let's talk about the horrors that we seek out in order to turn away from the horrors of reality.
Indeed, indeed. So, I guess it's time for Emiliano. Yes. The next question, Emmy.
Sure.
Go
Sí,
ahead.
sí, bien. Williamson. Yes, yes, sí. Voy. Bien, Mr. Williamson, aunque usted plantea en sus historias, lo ha dicho en más de una entrevista, miedos muy realistas, en varias de ellas se nota un interés por formas de vampirismo. Por ejemplo, recuerdo ahora mismo uno de los títulos, Season Pass o To Feel Another Wow. Esto es así, hay un interés por plantear formas de vampirización, es un tropo narrativo con el que le gusta experimentar, o más bien es un síntoma de algo que ve en la sociedad, especialmente en el mundillo actoral.
Amy, uh, according to my humble point of view, is making a very good question about that in your works you shows interest in some kind of vampirization, and he would
Of
like
what?
to know
Of what? Interest
vam-
in.
vampirization to convert in vampires.
Okay.
Vampirization, I don't know, is the proper name.
Vampir-
Yes, and Amy wants to know if this just a narrative trope that you like to experiment with, or is much more a reflection of social issues, especially in the acting world.
In the acting world.
Yeah.
Okay. Vampirization of emotion, or I'm not quite sure which stories you're referring to.
Diferentes tipos, sí, diferentes tipos de vampirización. Por ejemplo, en Season Pass es una pareja de ancianos que al establecer contacto con gente joven, como que recibe más vida, más tiempo de vida. En el cuento To Feel Another's Wow, por ejemplo, es una protagonista, una actriz que se nutre, digamos, creo que nutrirse sería la palabra más correcta, ¿no? Se nutre del talento o de las posibilidades de los otros actores para ser mejor.
Yes, is much more a thing, according to Emmy, of nurturing. For instance, a couple of elder couple, a couple elder.
Season pass, yes.
Yes.
Season pass.
They are surrounded by young people, so they are in some kind of feeding with the
Yes.
young spirit. And in
Right.
the case of this actress, she is
Yes,
by
she's feeding off of his emotion.
yes,
Yes.
she's nurturing herself.
Right. Exactly. Yes. I think that's the concept of vampirism. I guess I don't feel comfortable with using old tropes. I mean old treatments of old tropes. Like vampirism is a trope, but
Yep.
the fact that we're not sucking blood from someone's neck, I prefer to see what one person can leach from another. And in the case of To Feel Another's Woe, it's emotion. It's the ability to project emotion and to feel emotion. And if that is taken away from an actor, he loses his livelihood, he loses his life, he loses what has meaning to him. And to me, that's much more interesting than having someone grow pale from lack of blood. And the same with the old couple in Season Pass.
Yeah.
They are vampires of a sort, but what they take, I think they say that what we take is so little. It's just so little. It may shorten their lives by a day or two, but it keeps us alive. And it's not blood, but it's something that they touch, and somehow they're able to draw youth, a little bit of that youth that enables them to extend their lives. To me, that's more interesting than actual sucking blood. I mean, we've seen sucking blood. I think the only true blood vampire story that I ever did was for an HWA, Horror Writers of America anthology that was about vampires, and that was I dealt with it in a very bizarre way, almost too distasteful to talk about here.
Yes, is a new approach to the vampire figure that people that is on daily basis pumping from the vital energy or
Mhm.
the chi as the Asian people believes that is the energy of the whole body. So this instead of fangs, they go like a gas station and pumping the vital
Mhm.
energy to survive and keep going.
Right.
All right. Fer.
Yes. Su novela McCain Dilemma es una gran novela negra en donde reúne todos los tropos clásicos de la novela negra y los reúne de una manera muy genial utilizando mortalidad humana. Es excelente, es una novela muy buena y me llama la atención que no haya escrito más novelas negras, teniendo en cuenta el resultado de esta novela. Y si no pensó en alguna continuación a dicha novela.
All right. Fer is referring to McCain's dilemma that it could be noir or a crime novel that where you mixing human mortality with the black genre, and he would like to know why, according to his, and I couldn't agree more, is a great novel. Is I absolutely agree with him. And considering the great novel that is, why didn't you continue for this path of the crime novel or even a sequel of McCain's Dilemma?
Okay. Um, it. I really would have liked to have continued with McCain. I wrote that book sort of as a reaction to so many of the crime novels that I read and enjoyed, like Robert B. Parker, Spencer books. I always enjoyed those, but you had and I suppose it started all the way back with Philip Marlowe and Raymond Chandler, really,
All
that
right.
you had the slick talking, fast talking detective who always had a smart remark for everyone. And I thought, a person who treated his clients like that probably wouldn't keep clients for very long. And I thought, let's just have a guy who's just a family guy who doesn't have any axes to grind, who, is pleasant with people, and he finds himself in a situation that he never expected to get into. And so I liked that about McCain, and the fact that he was fighting a medical problem, a terrible medical problem, at the same time he's dealing with the criminals. Um, but that book was orphaned. And what that means is I had a good editor on that book, but he left Tor Books just as that book was released.
Oh,
And it dove, it disappeared. I think it might have sold 500 copies. So there was no question of there being a sequel to it. Um, I I really like the crime genre, and I've done other crime novels that I I really got away from supernatural horror and did more crime novels. But I was never really able to find good publishers for them. One was called Defenders of the Faith. Another was Hunters. One called Hunters, and I really like them. I think they're some of my best work, but they just never took off. But I much prefer crime writing, and actually now I much prefer reading mystery and crime novels to reading contemporary horror.
yeah. Now, nowadays, I would like to add that of course, the horror genre is um, so large. The horizon is absolutely, you know, you can bang for a place, bang for the other. The hospitality of the genre is huge.
Mhm.
And of course, there is no limit, clear limit between suspense and thriller and fantasy, and and
Right.
nowadays we are facing many writers that are making some kind of hybridization of the whole components of the genre itself.
Mhm.
So, writing crime novels with some supernatural aspect of the bad guy, for say,
Mhm.
or otherwise, bad boys, the detective of the PI or whatever
Mhm.
has some kind of helper, or he is a medium, like trying to hoochie coochie stuff, and to solve the cases. And is very interesting how the boundaries of the genre is getting much more blur uh,
Mhm.
as it used to be.
Yeah.
So, but on the other way, listening to your answer, I it's an opinion, of course, but I always think about the editors, that they are like another businessman. So
Precisely.
they have to secure the revenue for the stakeholders, wherever they be.
Right.
Uh, so if they think this, you are, for instance, a supernatural horror writer,
Mhm.
it's not good that you move from your path because the people is waiting for more than this. It's like, for instance, Neil Diamond, everybody is waiting for Sweet Caroline. People wants to sing, and in the same way they hear for the first time in the first record.
Mhm.
So many times editors act like like the shopper in the next corner or around the corner,
Mhm.
and saying, no, okay, this is good, but uh, go back to your usual path. People is waiting for
Exactly.
that.
Yeah.
Don't make any change. Don't put in danger your future, and of course my future.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's really true. I mean, if I think if I had stayed writing typical genre horror, my career would have gone up rather than commercially. I'm
Yeah,
talking.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, I know. Because my most recent book that I wrote was sort of a noir James M. Cain influenced book set in the 50s.
Oh,
And it has there's a supernatural element to it, but it's basically a noir relationship novel, and it's proven very difficult to sell. I don't have an agent anymore because I didn't have much luck with them, and I so as a result, I really haven't marketed stuff. I'm terrible when it comes to marketing. I'm from that old school, coming up in the 80s when the publisher did the marketing. You didn't have to go out and promote yourself over and over and over. I mean, I think so many writers today spend more time promoting themselves on social media than
yes, of
they
course.
do paying, writing.
But maybe the eruption of the social media changed the whole business
It did
because,
completely.
as you say, back in the 80s, without the internet or the social media, whatever, uh, the role of the writer was writing.
Precisely. Yeah.
You find a good agent or an agent who find a
They do
good
the business, they do the work, the
the
selling work, and
cut
you
a good
write.
deal. And of course, if you are lucky or not, it depends what you think about the tools of promoting your last work. But that's all. You appear in some city or some place or some library or some
Right.
shop store. You sign box, shake hands, and
Yep.
goodbye.
That's it.
And
Yeah.
nowadays, in all the aspect of the not only for the writers, even the good old professions like lawyers or medical doctors and architects or everybody who is giving a service. The banks is all the time,
Yeah.
or of the pharmacist industry is all the time bombing you with new release in a way that it couldn't be thinkable uh, 40, 50 years ago. So,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay, next question, our friend Emmy.
Yes. En una entrevista publicada en Speaking of Horror, el libro de entrevistas, usted dijo que disfrutaba más siendo un creador que siendo un intérprete actoral, ¿no? La pregunta es, ¿cómo definiría usted o en qué radica para usted la diferencia entre ser un creador literario, un autor, y ser un creador en escena desde lo actoral?
Emmy is referring to an interview you gave to the book Speaking of Horror, where you said, I quote, I enjoy being a creator more than I enjoy being an interpreter. How would you define or how be the difference between being a creator in literature matters
Mhm.
and being a creator in or on a stage from acting?
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that an actor is essentially, and I've been, both an actor and a writer, and the actor is the interpreter, and there's great joy to be found in that. I mean, I have loved acting. I don't do it much anymore. But when I have done it, I have really loved it. That sense of particularly stage acting, being with an audience and having the audience respond to what you're doing. But when you're writing, then you are a creator. You are making it up from whole cloth. And in the terms of, I've written some things for the stage, and that's when you writing for theater is completely different from fiction writing, because when you write a play, you've written a blueprint, you've written a plan, and you turn that over to the actor, to the director, to the interpreters, and it's out of your hands. And there your fate is in their hands, and it's great either way. I mean, I love being a creator because when I write a novel like Rain, which was my theater novel,
Yeah.
which I'm about to start doing an audiobook of that. So it'll be interesting to see how I interpret my own work.
Yeah.
Uh, but when you do that, it's like when you write a novel like Rain, um, you play all the characters.
You are the puppeteer. Yes.
You make it up as you go. Well, actually, I try and do as much in advance as I can. But it's wonderful getting inside the heads of all these characters. And that's what you do as an actor, as an interpreter. But when you're on stage, generally you only do one character. But when you write, you have to be all of them. And and for a ham like myself, I'm not sure if you understand, a person who just loves to perform.
Yeah.
It's wonderful because you play all the roles and you have all the lines. So yes, that's the joy of being a creator as opposed to the other joy of being an interpreter.
Yeah. If I may add, a couple of days ago, I saw an interview to Christopher Waltz, the Quentin Tarantino fetish, and one this last night show or whatever, a very well-known host asked how being such a nice person in body and flesh, it seems so naturally that he is a really nasty person, being a Nazi or in Django in Change, some kind of, we all know about what we are discussing. And when when the host started the question, I say, "Oh, what a good question." But when he goes, I say, me myself being a writer, I know, as you say, that a script, even for comics, I write a lot of script for comics,
Mm-hmm.
is always a working in process. And the very first time I was really angry and upset because the way that they turn the things that I was playing in my mind, because you are the puppeteer of all of them. And the answer of Christopher Waltz was, he was astonished because he said, well, I don't want to sound uh, disrespectful, but it's called acting.
Yes, it is.
You have you have to empty yourself or put yourself back wherever your method as actor you follow or not, whatever. Um, but you if you are Strasberg, Lee Strasberg, and Stanislavski
the method actor.
character, you go inside full time, 24 by 7, being the character. But the character, of course, is a mix of the own feelings and the own sensations,
Sense,
how to
sense memories.
Yes,
everything.
to express these feelings, these emotions, these dialogues. That is the way that the characters express themselves. But anyway, you always are reciting a part that was in the mind of somebody else.
Right, exactly.
So your creation, I think, is have a boundary very much more or less open or not according to the director of the
exactly
and the play. Of course, if you are being Hamlet or Macbeth, you have to observe the Shakespearean tone and the whole words by heart, because it's Shakespeare. In other kind of movies or theater pieces, you can
still there's a lot of interpretation that you can do. I mean, even though Hamlet has been done, how many hundreds of thousands of times, there can still be a new Hamlet, a Hamlet that makes people look at it as they never have before. So that's the joy of live theater, when you get so many creative people in a situation like that and turn them loose.
Yes, I don't know if you have the chance to watch a video for some celebration, Shakespearean celebration, where the most famous English actors, Shakespearean actors, were starting the famous
To be or not to be?
not to be, yes.
Yes,
To
yes,
be
I
or
did
not to
see
be.
that.
And the answer said, no, is to be
Yes.
or not to be. And
Yes.
finally, Judi Dench and McKellen, David Tennant, all the whole great actors nowadays still alive. And yeah, he's
Here she is.
beautiful.
There she is.
Oh, which is the name?
Zelda.
Zelda.
Zelda. Yes.
Oh.
I think she was originally, and we got her at a pet store, and that was the name that the people who had fostered her called her. And that probably was after the Legend of Zelda, but we decided to keep it and name her after Zelda Fitzgerald. So.
Yeah. Well changed. So, well, to be or not to be, going back to our questions. And right now, is fair, isn't it?
Yes. Primero, para estar seguro, es Chet Williamson quien ha escrito el Pennsylvania Dutch Alphabet. Pero si no, sacamos la pregunta. Escribió ese
¿Qué
libro.
cosa?
El Pennsylvania
Fair
Dutch
is asking if Pennsylvania Dutch alphabet is of your own.
I'm sorry?
Fernando is asking, just to be clear, that if the Pennsylvania Dutch alphabet is of your own, you are the writer, or not. In case that you are not the writer, we put away the question.
That is me. I wrote the Pennsylvania Dutch alphabet, and I wrote the Pennsylvania Dutch Night Before Christmas. That is me.
Es un libro
Yeah.
bellísimo. Es a beautiful book. It's gorgeous. Eh, la pregunta es, ¿cómo le llegó ese proyecto? Y si él eligió todas las letras, las palabras que corresponden a cada letra. ¿Cómo le llegó el proyecto? Y si él eligió todas las palabras que corresponden a cada letra del alfabeto.
All right. Going to the development of the question, Fernando wants to know that in this Pennsylvania Dutch alphabet that he considers, and I agree, is a delightful reading, that if you choose each word such X or Belgian scale, that is Santa Claus, the Dutch for Santa Claus,
Yes.
or was a given by the editor or everybody, and it's you can read the whole book like a folklore, a lore compendium. And if that your intention, or how the proposal, if any, of the book came about, if is a proposal or is just your not quiet mind going
Well,
to the new boundaries.
all right. I ever since 1980, I
Yeah.
have written my wife Laurie a story for Christmas and give it to her on Christmas Eve. And it's usually about something that we have done together during the year, or sometimes it's a ghost story. Some of them have been published in anthologies after I've written them for her. But one year I decided to write a Pennsylvania Dutch Night Before Christmas for her. And that was the first book. And she said, why don't you send this to, there was a company called Pelican Publishing in New Orleans, and they did regional Night Before Christmas books. And we had always read one called The Cajun Night Before Christmas, and enjoyed it. So I wrote a parody of Night Before Christmas using the Belsnickel character and Pennsylvania Dutch things, and sent it to them. And they published it. I got an illustrator and published it, and it did really well. I mean, I went to one signing in this area, and I signed like 800 books, which
Oh
was
my.
I've never done in my fiction. And so after that, they also did ABCs, alphabet books. And I thought, well, maybe they'd go for a Pennsylvania Dutch alphabet book. And I did I did that. But I don't know if you gentlemen have ever heard of a writer named Lloyd Arthur Eshbach. He was the creator of Fantasy Press, which was one of the first small presses in the United States, started in the 40s. It just published science fiction and fantasy. And Mr. Eshbach had written, for the pulp magazines as early as 1930. And I got to know him, and was a wonderful man. And I was telling him about this because he had helped me out with some of the stuff on the Night Before Christmas. And I said to him, I said, Lloyd, I got every letter except for X. I don't know what to do with X. And he was very Dutchy. And he said, well, how about X? Eggs. I said, that works. So the publisher bought that one too. And they did both of those. But yeah, it's really been a joy because a lot of people, especially the night before Christmas, people around here in this area make it part of their Christmas celebration and read it every Christmas Eve. So I feel a little twinge of immortality when I hear that. So that's
Good.
how that came about.
Very, very good story. Uh, Glad to hear that. Emi?
Sí. Bien, de acuerdo con sitios especializados en cine como imdb.com, por ejemplo, con excepción del cortometraje Gandhi at the Bat, no se han adaptado relatos o películas suyas. ¿Tiene usted alguna opinión o idea de por qué no ha sucedido, teniendo en cuenta que muchos de sus relatos pueden filmarse, ¿no? Pueden ser filmados?
Emi is asking that according the files of IMDb, you know,
Yeah, Internet Movie Database.
yeah. Um, the only of your works that had go to film was Gandhi Abdebat, as you previously said. Considering that, as far as we know, the only adapted work of yours to film. So, Amy would like to know why do you think, what do you think about it? That given that many of your works are kind of a play, as I don't know if you are as an actor, you move yourself from the writer and go in between, and that's the difference between being a creator on stage and being a creator behind the typewriter.
Mm-hmm.
Is in your case is a mishap, but you are very visual, very stage in the proposal of your works, your novels. And Amy wants to know if you have an idea or what about the reason why uh, not all those works of yours were adapted to the film or the silver
Right.
screen, to say
Well,
generally.
it's some of my stuff is a little difficult. I've always thought that Ash Wednesday would make an incredible movie with the just the image of those blue ghosts all over the town. And but it's not like Blumhouse material. It's not couple goes into a house. I mean, the only haunted house book that I ever really wrote was Soulstorm, and that was on a grand scale. So you'd need a huge budget
Yeah,
to
indeed.
do that, and you'd need budgets for almost big budgets for almost everything that I've written, except maybe Lowland Rider in the subway. I think could be a very cheap film to make. But again, I have not had agents who have pushed my work into film, unfortunately. I wish I could. I don't know if oh, that's so ridiculous. Del Toro.
Yes,
I would love to get Del Toro a copy of Ash Wednesday if he hasn't read it already, because I think he'd do a great job with it.
absolutely. Yes.
But unfortunately, I don't know. I go to a lot of horror movies, and I kind of find a sameness to so many of them. I mean, even have you seen is Steven Soderbergh's Presence in Argentina yet?
No,
Yeah.
No,
todavía
I
Yeah.
don't think so.
I like Soderbergh as a filmmaker, but
Yeah.
Presence just left me a little because it's like I'd seen this before. I mean, it's from the camera is from the point of view of the ghost, which is interesting to a certain extent. But it became awfully claustrophobic after a while because the camera never goes outside of the house. And the plot was sort of predictable, and I don't know. But so many horror movies that I've seen lately depend on a lot of body horror, um, which I enjoy. No, I chuckle and laugh at it and everything. But uh, my my books are kind of serious, um, or at least I've attempted to be serious in them. One of the my favorite critiques that I ever got from a reviewer, and I forget where it was, but they were talking about Ash Wednesday, and they said that I lumbered after the laurels of high art.
Oh,
And I went, that's fine. I'd rather lumber after high art than succeed in creating schlock.
you you gave us the title of this interview.
Lumbering after the laurels of high art. I love it. I love
Great, is a great point. Great point.
Well, it's like
Uh,
what Herman Melville said, I think better to sink in unknown shoals than to wait on, I don't know. But anyway, better
yeah,
to try and fail than to succeed at.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Uh, it's amazing. Now, our friend Emiliano.
Yes. Mr. Williamson, usted dijo que el terror es, y cito, just an
Emotion.
Yes.
Oh,
emotion.
yes.
¿Puede usted expandirse un poco sobre?
Well, I don't know if, but it's freezing over there, Emiliano. But I complete the question with a quotation mark. You say that horror is just an emotion. He would like to if you would be so kind to expand the idea of horror as an emotion.
Okay. Yeah, I think that I referred to that in the idea of genre, that horror is a genre, like romance or westerns or crime or anything. But when you come right down to it, horror is simply an emotion that we feel, and you don't need the supernatural. You don't need mythical creatures to create horror. Um, what you're after is that response in the reader, or in the case of films, the audience, um, that that gives a chill. That that is something that the reader will retain when they close the book. And my favorite, my favorite kind of horror is the horror of unease. That and the classic ghost story writers did this beautifully, like M.R. James and
Yeah,
Ian Benson. Um, they even there's a story called by Percival Landon called Thornley Abbey, that's a classic ghost story, and has really some some very graphic horror in it, even though it was written, I think, in the 1910s or earlier. And this is the kind of stuff that just sends chills up my spine. And I think readers, a lot of readers today are so used to being cudgeled over the head with gross, extreme horror,
Body horror, yes.
body horror, that they can't, they've lost the ability to react to those so delightfully pleasant chills that really good horror writing can do. But again, too, I mean, there's the horror of Auschwitz. There's the horror of the Holocaust. There's the horror of man's inhumanity to man in general. That to try and pigeonhole horror into something. I know there are people who say, "Oh, I can't read horror, or I can't see horror movies. I don't like horror." And I'm like, well, it's like no matter what you read, there are going to be moments of horror in it because that's what I mean. I've started reading some John le Carré, the spy, the spy books. And I never get around to reading those, and I'm reading some now. And there are moments in there, as cold and detached as it is, there are moments of what I would call horror in there where you just go, ooh, that make you draw up. So I think you can find horror in nearly every genre. So to pigeonhole horror itself is limiting.
Yeah.
If that helps to answer the question. We were talking about horror as emotion.
Just for adding foundation, if it needed, over here,
Man,
that's one of my
man.
favorite
Yeah,
books.
yeah. I love James. I
Yeah,
love
yeah.
James.
And I used to read a lot of scholars and something. I'm not just a writer. I like to study the genre, and it is a general sense that is one of the genre that is the definition of the genre is given by the emotion that it causes.
Mm-hmm.
You go to the cinema or the theater to see, we say in Spanish, una de miedo, one of fear, you say?
Mm-hmm.
So horror genre is the genre which causes horror. And this horror that you say is coming with the human being from the first cave where the sorcerers, the witches, the shamans calling the horde around the fireplace to tell stories that in one side is for entertainment and in the other side were for learning. So don't eat this beautiful, colorful fruit because you're gonna die very badly. Or beware over there because under this, I don't know, grass is, moving suns and this kind of,
Everything beyond the limits of the fire, the
yeah,
darkness out there. Yeah.
yeah. So this is very, very deep in our minds, in our brain, in the
Oh, yeah.
cables.
Primal.
Yeah.
Primal. Yeah.
So, well, thank you for your explain. And Fer, your turn.
Yes, my last question es, usted escribió una continuación de Robert Bloch's Psycho, with Psycho Asylum. ¿Cómo encaró ese proyecto? Y hay que mencionar que el personaje principal, el asesino en Psicosis, es acá prácticamente, Norman Bates es prácticamente el detective de esta historia sin hacer spoilers. ¿Cómo encaró este proyecto?
Well, Fernando said that you wrote Psycho Sanitarium, that is subsequel of Psycho of the well-known Robert Bloch.
Yes.
So how do you approach to this iconic work of the much more after the movie of Hitchcock, of course? How Hitchcock was the director? I don't know. Well, um, how do you approach to make this work, considering that in this case, the former killer and former weirdo, to say in a way, gently, was, without the spoil, almost the detective in the story. So how
I'm sorry,
do you,
almost is what in the story?
the detective?
Oh yeah.
Or
Okay. Yes.
how do you approach when you have, we are walking over the shoulders of giants, the same, but in this case, how do you approach? We would like to know the insight of the writer.
Okay. Yeah. Um, I I am a psycho kid. My parents took me to see the film when when I was, I think, 12 years old, and it scared the pants off of me. Oh my God, mother just terrified me. But I loved Psycho ever since. I read the novel. I at that time in the early 60s, um, Robert Bloch collections of short stories were coming out in paperback, and I bought every one of those I could get my hands on. And I have always loved Robert Bloch. I finally got to meet him at some horror writers association meetings, and it was just a delightful man. And when I I I think the Bloch estate, I'm not quite sure how they found out about me, but they asked me if the agent asked me if I would be willing to try a sequel, that they wanted to do a sequel set between there are two timelines. There's the movie timeline, and then there is the Robert Bloch timeline, because he wrote Psycho 2 and Psycho House, which was the third book, which doesn't even have Norman Bates in it at all. Um, so I said, sure. And they wanted it set in the sanitarium. And I thought, well, this is going to be tricky because, I mean, the idea that I could do a sequel to Psycho was just like, oh my God, yes, yes. I almost
By all
anything else.
means. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've been offered some work for hire stuff that I've kind of gone, nah, I'm not interested in that. But this one I could not say no. And because I loved Psycho so much and I loved Bloch's work. So I came up with the basic plot idea and tied it in with what had come before and with what came after in Bloch's Psycho 2. Uh, and just did a full outline. I always outline. I'm a big outliner, and they liked it, and I went from there, and I had a wonderful time writing it. It was so much fun, and I used Bloch's Norman Bates because his Bloch's Norman Bates is very different from Hitchcock's Norman Bates. He's kind of a little chubby and doughy and not the gorgeous Anthony Perkins character, but uh, but yeah, I just went ahead and I did it, and it was limiting in terms of plot what you could do inside a sanitarium. So I had to resort to some things that I kind of wished I hadn't had to resort to, but I really had fun with them and made them part of the long backstory, and so it made sense. But yeah, I mean, it was just something that I, I never knew that I always wanted to do that until I had the chance to do it. And I had a wonderful time.
Good for you. So, Amy.
Yes. This will be my last question too. Usted dijo en una entrevista nuevamente, y cito, sociopathic killers need love too. En relación con esta transformación de Norman Bates de la que hablaba, ¿cree usted que la, entre comillas, humanización de los personajes más marginales u outsiders enriquece la narración y por consiguiente aumenta el magnetismo de la lectura?
Amy is referring to another phrase of yours or statement that you said sociopathic killers need love too.
Social what killers? What?
Sociopathic killers
Oh, sociopathic. Yeah.
Yes, need love too. A wonderful statement, if I may. So he wants to know if you believe that the so-called humanization of the characters, even the outsiders of the work, add an enrichment of the narrative, and therefore enlarge the magnetism of the rhythm.
Say that last phrase again, please.
All right.
Enlarge
the magnetism. You have the compass. No, the compass has attached to the north. This is magnetic. So the magnetism is the property to something bring to you or to the North Pole or whatever.
Yeah.
So
okay. Magnetism.
In this sense, is saying magnetism as I can't find a synonym in English, but is this, yes, empathize, feeling with the other.
Yeah.
Thank you for. Yeah. So these killers, sociopathic killers, need love too is a great statement. And what do you think, or what is your approach in this case? Because the humanization of this kind of bad characters or monster enrich the narration and open the horizon of the reading.
Okay. Yeah, I've created some very nasty characters in my time, but I'm not sure if sociopaths need love as much as we require empathy toward them. Not to say that dismisses their actions, but if we can empathize enough to understand them. The character in Dreamthorpe, the killer in Dreamthorpe, is horrible, but I gave him a backstory that I think will at least help readers understand why he became what he did. The writer that I have to say I think does this better than anyone is Thomas Harris in Red Dragon and in The Silence of the Lambs and even in Hannibal, because he gets inside these people so brilliantly that there's a scene I think in Red Dragon where Will Graham, who is hunting the character known as the Tooth Fairy, Francis Dollarhide, says, when he realizes what his past, Dollarhide's past had been as a child, he says, I weep for the child that he was, but I still would blow him right out of his socks if I had the chance. And it's true. I mean, there is no going back. Recidivism for some of these people is total. They will, if they are released, they'll do exactly what they did before. But at least if we can weep for what happened to them as children, we can understand them fully as characters, and we can not accept, but understand the reality of what they do as adults and why they do it. So yeah, I think that it's I hate villains who are just villains and with nothing to quantify them as human beings. It's yeah. I like a little backstory.
Yeah, of course.
Simply, yeah, yeah. But why have they become what they've become? And, yeah. And that makes the difference between a Francis Dollarhide and Art the Clown in the Terrifier movies, which
yes,
yeah,
yes. One teach about the construction of the building of the character, and always the counter protagonist, the villain, is well worth to say. Don't make it so villain, don't make it so plain. Give him or her some aspect of humanity,
exactly.
because is pretty much uh, interesting that the other is in some way like you.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always felt that we are all capable of terrible things if we are pushed to it. If things happen to us that drive us to that point, we're all capable. It's just a matter of how far we can be pushed.
yeah.
It's a sad way to think about humanity, but I think the potential for evil is there in all of us, as is the potential for good.
Yeah. Now it's supposed to be my time of to ask it, but uh, for the sake of the whole um, interview and your time, I will just take. I have a lot of questions, of course. I spend my whole day uh, at your side, trying to learn, trying to go inside your mind as
Well, feel free, because I mean, both my wife and I right now are in the house sick. So she has COVID, and supposedly I tested positive and then I tested negative, but I'm still feeling COVID-y. So
yeah.
fortunately, we are not face to face, so I don't have to worry about
Okay,
infecting any of you.
but I would like uh, to go back to your last answer, that in many of your stories, the characters face their morality or fear of personal judgment, understanding by morality that the character are struggling with their own ethical decisions and the fear of being judged by this decision. How do you think this kind of horror that is pretty much, as you say, intimate, much more existential, resonates in the current readers against the pleasure, as you say before, for the body horror, the gore horror, this kind of distinction. I used to say that the body horror is like Indians and cowboys. Each side is battling against each other, trying to exterminate. One in one, the hat is a Stetson, and in the other is a mask or a clown disguise. Yeah. But considering that is one of strong line of work in our genre, how do you see these tendency of yours to present characters with this kind of morality or concern about being judged for the wrongdoing they commit?
I've always felt that my work is more character driven than plot driven. Oh. To me, it's like when we read books, when we come away from them, we don't necessarily remember the plot so much as we remember the characters.
Absolutely.
If we remember the books at all. I mean, when you read Moby Dick, you remember Ahab. When you read The Great Gatsby, you don't remember so much what the order of events as you remember the characters, Gatsby and Daisy. And so I try to start with character, because if you don't have a strong character with a moral dilemma, and I mean, talk about obvious, my one book was called McCain's Dilemma. So, essentially that's what fiction is about. They are the moral dilemmas that characters face and how they deal with it. And you have to figure out, I think, how to put that into a genre aspect, and go from there. I would like to think that when readers read my books, they might be pleasantly surprised to find that it's not just in your face stuff, but it's dealing with characters and their problems. But I've always done that, and I've always preferred to read books that deal with that as well. So I don't know what else I can say. Oh, the cat's back.
Yeah.
I can always have a darker mustache if I do this. Yeah, I when it's funny when current readers do read my books, they're pleasantly surprised. They say, "Wow, this was really good, even though it's old."
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
And going in the same way that you are talking about in your character, in your works, the borders between supernatural and psychological are often blurred. And if you can move often away of the phrases that I agree, it's always blurry. The supernatural of the psychology, kind of, the turn of the crew is the more emblematic example of this kind of way of writing that I find in personally, I am speaking for myself, in your line of work, this mixing between the we don't know if actually they are for the sanitarium or they are suffering, the harassment of the ghost or the monster or something like that.
I always strive for that ambiguity,
Yeah,
because in real life, when you have when people say, "Oh, there are ghosts," and the television shows about hauntings and everything, and nothing is really definite. It's always ambiguous, and that um, supernatural natural ambiguity, I think, provides a nice contrast to the moral ambiguities that I try and look for in the characters.
yeah.
So yeah.
In the same way, one could be say that your work uniquely portrays the evolution of the fear as recurring theme, the evolution of the fear. So, how do you perceive this evolution of your story over the years? How that this evolution intersects, do you think, with the contemporary fears of our nowadays society? How uh, this evolution of your understanding of fear finds the nowadays notion of fears. What do you think about it?
I think it's much harder to write something that inspires fear today. And I think in a way that's why horror writing is getting so extreme physically, um, because there's so much more to fear from society and from your neighbors uh, these days. It's I don't know, especially here in America, things are getting, the like I saw the movie Civil War a few years ago, and it seems that that is becoming a much greater possibility. So, when I was a kid, the fear was nuclear annihilation.
Yeah,
Um, and that was a biggie. We got a lot of material out of that in those days. And then when I started writing horror, I'm not sure what our shared fears were in the 80s and when I began writing my first books. Um, but now it's all you have to do is turn on the news
yeah,
if you want a dose of horror. And the problem is that we don't have any crucifixes or holy water to disperse the evils anymore. They're
yeah.
with us. So I'm not sure if that answered your question, and I'm not sure I have an answer to it, you know.
Yeah, me neither. So that I'm going to the who precedes me with the knowledge and the wisdom, because I don't know even when you write uh, classic horror
Mhm.
and without the stigma of the body horror or the Civil War horror, because as we say priorly, Indians and cowboys is the same. Just you change a little the characters and little the scenario. I'm going beyond my questions. I would like to know. This is a personal question for all uh, horror writers, and is quite um, is very typical when
Mhm.
the person interviewing, because everybody wants to know why horror, why you go for this path and not for this other path.
I think for me, it was my upbringing. I I loved. I was a monster kid, what they call, now a monster kid. I grew up with horror movies and famous monsters of Filmland magazine, and I started reading Edgar Allan Poe and having the stories told to me, um, and when I was young. And then I got into the early 1960s were a great time for horror in paperbacks. There was so much horror being reprinted back then from the pulps, from Weird Tales and things like that, and great horror movies. The Roger Corman Poe films, starting with House of Usher in 1959 and going through the mid 60s. They were great, and I saw all of those, and we had Thriller, Boris Karloff's Thriller on TV, which was a terrific horror uh, show. And I just got totally into that stuff. And so then I found Lovecraft, and I really enjoyed, Lovecraft when I was a kid, and still do. I mean, I still buy the volumes of letters and all of that. But I just had horror in my blood. And so when I finally decided to start writing fiction, it seemed only natural that I would do horror. And there are so many possibilities with horror. Like I said, if you deal with horror as an emotion, um, there are tons of stories you can write that can deal with that emotion. So all you have to do is come up with characters and plots and settings. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not easy when you come right
but
down.
with regard with this answer of yours, uh, and the understanding that fear can reflect our internal anxieties.
Mhm.
What do you think about the relationship between horror literature and the psychoanalysis analysis? You know, the Freud, psychiatrist analysis of
Psychoanalysis.
yes, psychoanalysis. Sorry, um, because this the fear the character suffer and the fear that pretend to translate to the victim is some expression of the internal anxiety. And this is a subject that since Freud and their followers today was a psychology subject.
Yeah,
So how do
yeah.
you
I
deal
think I
with
think
this?
I think that's almost a given in horror, almost a subgenre. Um, wi- uh, I'm thinking back in the 50s when you had wonderful writers like Richard Matheson, who really brought horror into the modern age, and Charles Beaumont, Rod Serling, to a certain extent, and Bloch as well. But they were writers who modernized horror, who took it out of the Gothic and into what was then, of course, contemporary times, and psychology and psychoanalysis were very much a part of that. And I think most horror writers have retained that as well. It's something that's become so much a part of of modern writing in general that we hardly even think about it anymore. If you know what I mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Vamos,
The age of anxiety, the whole age of anxiety. Mhm. I'm sorry,
Claro,
Fernando.
¿qué decías?
vayamos cerrando. preguntándole, consultándole qué es lo que está escribiendo en estos momentos y agradeciéndole su tiempo.
Yes, Mr. Williamson, we would like to stay the whole evening with you, but we have to close, not to abuse of your time and your generosity. But as usual, to any writer, we would like to know, what are you at to? What are you writing, if any, or what are you planning, if you plan, or you are much more of the people who got an idea and or the representation of a character, as you say, and let's conduct the horses and ride along with the rider.
Well, I've gotten lazy in my old age, I'm afraid. I don't write much anymore at all. I do, I narrate audiobooks, which keeps me busy. And I do have a novel that I've started, but I don't know if it'll ever get done. It's you know, to be honest, it's like I ask myself, do I want to spend a year of my time working on this again, or have I earned the right just to sit back and take a little easy at this point? But when I talk to folks like you, it does make me think, gee, maybe I ought to, because I still enjoy it when I can crank something out. But
Well, on behalf of your readers, I would like to say that we cherish the if you come back to writing, but we understand that you earn the right to sitting and in the porch. Having, well, Pennsylvania is not pretty much with a porch like the southern houses, but yes, I just want a little question. Do you have any, I don't know, if when you write, you need something to help you, like music, like some kind of flowers, or smelling some kind of, or you just go to the keyboard on the ideas flowing as it goes?
yeah, I try and write in silence. I can't listen to music when I write because it creates rhythms, and the words have to have their own rhythm. And for me, music puts an artificial rhythm that isn't coming from me. That might sound pretentious, but I don't know. That's
No,
just
no,
the way
no, no, no.
I work.
What
I know
about,
people who can work and listen to vocal music, and I can't do it. I mean, my God, those are words barraging me. How can I write my words if I'm hearing those words, So I usually take time during the day and just listen to music, and lyrics and lovely things like that.
okay, okay. You were very generous. You were very, uh, how to say that? Um, you you gave us a masterclass
Oh,
of
well,
your
thank
writing.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, I really enjoyed all your questions were just really good and unexpected. Things that I don't usually get asked things like that. And
oh,
uh
thank you.
and it was really, really fascinating for me to have to come up with some of the answers to your questions. I really enjoyed talking to all of you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And Well, we keep waiting for this novel of yours. This interview is the kickoff of the new beginning. Well, we will be waiting with anxiety.
Oh, nice. Thank you. It's nice. It's nice to feel appreciated.
Absolutely, sir. You are really, really appreciated over here. I speak for us, but I know when we discuss this interview of yours, we really, really enjoy your work, and much more right now that we have the chance to meet you in person, in flesh. You are really, really a generous person, a very, very humorous person with this particular sense of humor that goes, when you say Poe, these romantic poets or writers that are all dizzy and under the influence of something or literally wake up, and you are
I'm only
really.
under the influence of coffee.
Oh, well, yes, but you are a very fine gentleman, and we really appreciate, and there is no way to thank you for your time and your generosity.
Oh, well, thank you. My heart.
All right. Thank
All
you very
right.
much, sir. Stay
Great
well.
talk. Thank
I
you.
hope your wife recover
We're
quite.
getting better. Yeah, we're getting. This helps.
Okay.
Okay.
See
Thank
you around.
you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much indeed. Once again.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, bye, bye.
There we